I don't know if you've been following this, but the Pentagon in the U.S. has for the last 5 years, and it's becoming more and more clear, they are verifying UFOs, they're verifying ships, they are saying that we now have technology that is extraterrestrial, and it is a fascinating thing to watch. And the one question that I've been having is, what will that do if one day we wake up and the president says, "Hey, a three-headed alien was in my office last night. I'd like you to meet him." But what would that do to us? And why do we have this fascination? I read some Jung the modern myth of things seen in the sky, where we seem to need something like that.
Why do we need something like that? I think it's because there's something within us that is constantly compelling us to look for and work towards an ideal. And it's built into us extraordinarily deeply. It's an instinct. Now, what that means for the fundamental structure of underlying reality, I don't know, but it's definitely there. I mean, you can see the manifestation of that instinct in all sorts of ways once you learn to look. So I was writing this morning about a hypothetical football team in a hypothetical American small town, which is the theme of endless numbers of American films and stories. It's a story that's told over and over. The high school team everyone knows, the whole town watches. The boys compete to be on the team, or they're jealous and envious because they can't be. Then when they make the team, they compete for top spot. Sometimes the best sport comes out on top, even if he's not as athletically gifted as the cynical player. You know the story. Everyone knows the story.
Yeah.
Cheerleading team is striving to go out with the quarterback, etc. Well, you might say, well, what does that have to do with your question? Well, look, why do we watch football? It's because we like to see people, we like to see men organize themselves into groups, aim at a target, and hit it with skill. We really, really, really like that. It's a religious ceremony to go to a football game and to watch that. That accounts for the tribal identification with the teams and the spontaneous and deep enjoyment that everybody has in witnessing the spectacle. And we want ethical behavior as well as part of the play, because we want the great player to be a great teammate, to be generous with his prowess, to bring his teammates along for the ride, to help them develop their skill. And so even in something as basic as that, as fundamental as that, as trivial and day-to-day in some sense as that, you can see this deep desire we have to identify an ideal and to pursue it. And so we're searching. That was what Jung was pointing out to some degree when he talked about UFOs as symbols of redemption from the sky. In science fiction stories, often aliens are there to save us or to judge us. They're the projection of heavenly beings. And that's our association, our tendency to associate the ideal with what's transcendent and above us. And you might ask, well, why would that be? It's like, well, what happens when you go out and look at the night sky and the stars are there? You're filled with a feeling of awe. And that awe is your reaction to the magnificence of the ultimate unknown. And so you project eternity into the sky, and that becomes the place of the ideal. And so that's part of the answer to why we need such things. There's no way around that.
So I know I lived in New York City for a long time, and it was amazing. I bought a ranch in the middle of nowhere, and I mean, you see the depth of the sky when there's no lights around you. And we sat outside the first night, and we just talked about the meaning of things in life. I hadn't done that at all, really, like that, when I was in New York. There's some relationship where you are pondering bigger things. And I think as we go into the cities, as we have more and more light and more distractions, we are missing some fundamental things of just, I guess we're just becoming so arrogant and we don't ponder how small we really are in things.
Well, what I think your comment about the night sky is well taken. I mean, it's definitely a good view of the night sky when it's dark is definitely one of those places, let's say, one of those situations where you encounter the absolute. And you have to ask yourself, well, what's your life like when you don't have that opportunity? Now, people made opportunities like that too, right? That's why they built cathedrals with their massive ceilings and the light pouring through in color and the music that would produce that sense of encounter with the transcendent. But you can certainly experience that especially in nature, especially at night, especially in relationship to the sky. People experience a similar sort of experience, I suppose, when they look at something like the Grand Canyon or the Niagara Falls, some massive work of nature. But it calls to that part of us that's always aiming to move ourselves higher. And it's become increasingly clear to me as a psychologist and as a biologically minded psychologist just exactly how deep an instinct that is. And, there are people who believe that we can dispense, for example, with religious belief. But I don't believe that's true. And I think the reason it's not true is because we can't dispense with the religious questions. Like, we can't dispense with what's the meaning of our life? What's the difference between good and evil? What's the ideal? What should we avoid? We can't avoid those questions ever. And so we need a realm that provides answers.
I think one of the first things I ever heard you talk about was relationship in a kind of abstract way with God and how important the redemptive story is. And I so like the way you approach it, because you don't know, or maybe you do and you don't say, but you don't profess that you are a believer, but you understand the importance to humans to be able to start again and have redemption. And we are destroying that now in our culture. Cancel culture, all of this stuff, critical race theory. There is no redemption